Hello everybody, and welcome to my not official third video that's coming soon. This is a special one-off, let's call it video 2.1, and today I'm going to review some basic rules about exponents. Now these are rules that will not be provided to you on an SAT test. You will encounter some math problems that deal with exponents, and in order to get those right, you gotta learn these rules backwards and forwards. But first, some breaking news. I am going to change my SAT name. Yes, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I feel like I do not have the right to use the title doctor. Real doctors, those people with MDs and PhDs, have spent many years of study and many years of hard work to earn that title. I have not done that. I was using it more in the spirit of Dr. J and Dr. Dre, but those guys are super cool superstars, and I'm only super cool. So I'm gonna change my name. I've been thinking about it, and I've come up with two possibilities. I'd love for you to help me decide. It's going to be either between A, Mr. SAT, or B, Mr. Guy who can help you smash your scholastic aptitude test. I'm wavering between the two. Would love your help to decide, so if you could comment below and let me know what you think, I would love that. Also, while you're at it, if you could subscribe, would love to have you join our jolly SAT family. On that note, let's get to the real stuff, the exponents. Swipe. All right, well, let's start with the basics. An exponent is a number raised to a power. You know when you see a number and then to the top right of that number is a tiny little number? That tiny little number is the exponent. For example, 2 raised to the third power can be written like this. So every exponent has 2 parts. There's the base, which is the big number, here the number 2, and there's the exponent, which is the number to the top right. Here it's the number 3. This can be termed as 2 to the third, 2 to the third power, or 2 raised to the third power. Now, incidentally, if a base is ever raised to the second power, we can also phrase that as squared. And when a base is raised to the third power, like in our example here, we can phrase that as cubed. So this can also be termed 2 cubed. All right, let's get to some important rules about how to multiply and divide exponents. Now, you may have just wondered, Mr. Name to soon change, why did you not mention how to add and subtract exponents? And the simple answer is because there are no simple rules to help us add and subtract exponents. More on that later. For now, let's continue on with some more of the basics. What does raising a number to a power actually mean? And here's the way I break it down. When you have a base and an exponent, the exponent first tells me how many times to write the base down. It really tells us how many times we're going to multiply the base by itself, but I break it down like this. 2 to the third, the first thing I do is I write the number 2 down 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then I'll put a multiplication symbol in between each one. 1, 2. So 2 to the third equals 2 times 2 times 2. What does that equal? Well, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. So 2 to the third equals 8. Let's use another example to further clarify things. Let's say 7 to the 5th. So what's the first thing that we do? I'm going to write the number 7 down 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'll put a multiplication symbol in between each one. Let me use my brain. That's going to equal 16,807. And by using my brain, I was just recalling what was on the calculator before I started this video. Now, by the way, a base can also be a negative number. Let's say -7 to the 5th. What are we going to do first? We're going to write a -7 down 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to write our multiplication symbols in between. And what's this going to equal? -16,807. Why is it a negative? In short, because when we multiply the first 2 numbers together, a negative times a negative, we're going to get a positive. That positive number times the next negative equals a negative. That negative number times the next negative number equals a positive. And that positive number times the final negative number equals a negative. All right, that stuff was all great, but you know what? That was all potatoes. Right now, we're gonna get to the meat, or meat substitute, of the exponent lesson, and that is right here in this chart, these exponent rules. Let's start with the top rule. The multiplication rule of exponents says that any base raised to a power times the same base raised to any power equals that base raised to the two powers added together. Now, to help us clear this up in our minds, let's use real numbers for all these variables. Let's say A is 2. Let's say X equals 6. And let's say Y equals 4. So in this example, we would write 2 to the 6th power times 2 to the 4th power equals 2 to the 6 plus 4 power, or 2 to the 10th power. That's the multiplication rule. Let's move on. The division rule says any base raised to a power divided by the same base, that's key, the same base, raised to any power equals that base raised to the first power minus the second power. Let's use our numbers. 2 to the 6th divided by 2 to the 4th equals 2 to the 6 minus 4, or 2 to the 2nd, or 2 squared. Moving on, let's get to the power of a power rule. That says that any base raised to a power and that entire thing is raised to yet another power, that's the same thing as the base raised to the two powers multiplied together. Let's use our numbers. 2 to the 6th, all raised to the 4th, equals 2 to the 6 times 4, or 2 to the 24th power. Moving on down the chart. Power of a product rule says that any two bases multiplied together and that product raised to a power, you can distribute the exponent to the two bases. So A times B, both raised to the x, is the same as A to the x times B to the x. Numbers. Here we're going to need a B. Let's make B 3. All right, so here we have parentheses. 2 times 3, all raised to the 6th, is the same as 2 to the 6th times 3 to the 6th. All right, and then you'd have to figure that out. Next, power of a fraction rule. A fraction raised to a power, again, we can distribute that exponent to the two parts of the fraction. A over B, all raised to the x power, equals A to the x over B to the x. Let's put in real numbers. 2 over 3, all raised to the 6th, equals 2 to the 6th over 3 to the 6th. It's really not so hard when you slow down and take a look at what these rules are really saying, right? You can do this, you really can. Now this next rule, I love it. This is like the best rule. This zero exponent rule, what it says is any base raised to the 0 power equals 1. We could have any string of craziness, xy times the square root of 47 plus 3cd. And if that's all raised to the 0 power, that all equals 1. I love this rule. Let's keep moving on. Negative exponent rule. Any base raised to a negative exponent is the same as 1 over the same base raised to the positive version of that exponent. For example, 2 raised to the negative 6th power equals 1 over 2 to the 6th power. It's easy to understand. Just commit it to memory. You're going to kill this. Having said that, the next rule is the most confusing of the bunch, but we're going to simplify it. This is the fractional exponent rule. Don't worry about how or why. Just worry about converting a base raised to a fractional exponent into this right here. So, for example, A raised to the x over y power, a fractional power, you're going to use this root symbol and just write it this way. We will deal with this more when we encounter a math problem that utilizes this, but for now, let's just learn how to convert this into this. So for example, if we had 2 raised to the 6th over 4 power, we would write our root symbol, write the 2, the x part of the power, which here is the 6th, and we'd write the denominator of the fraction here, which is the 4. So just learn how to make this conversion. Now you might be asking, this is 2 raised to the 6/4 power. Can I reduce that? The answer is yes, you can. This is the same as 2 to the 3/2 power. All right, final rule, a super easy one. It's the no exponent rule. And what this says is really any number that does not have an exponent next to it, we assume that exponent is 1. Really, all numbers are raised to the first power. Why is that? Because remember, the exponent tells us how many times to write that number down. Well, if a raised to the first power, we only write the a down once, then all numbers are raised to the first power. 2 raised to the first power, if I just write the number 2 down one time, 2 to the first equals 2. All right, now back to the question about adding and subtracting exponents, and I'm going to warn you right now about a trap that you're very likely to encounter on the SAT math test. You're going to have a question something like this. What does 2 to the third plus 2 to the fourth equal? And a trap answer is going to be 2 to the seventh. But remember, we add the exponents when we multiply like bases. When we multiply two bases raised to a power, that's when we add the powers together. When you're adding exponential terms, you do not add the exponents. That will be a trap answer. Don't fall for it. How do you solve that in that case? You have to evaluate each of the two individual terms and then add those together. All right? Boom diggity, that's it. That's all you need to know right there. Just know that stuff like you know the back of your hand. And you know what? People use that phrase, know it like you know the back of your hand. Do you really know the back of your hand? Do I know the back of my hand? I'm thinking about the back of my hand right now. Let's see. Let's see if I know the back of my hand. What is that? I got to get that checked out. Listen, know this stuff like you know the lyrics to your favorite song. Believe me, on most math exponent problems, the problems themselves are really pretty easy. They're just trying to find out if you know this stuff right here. Show them that you do. All right, guys, that's it. Do me a favor. Please help me choose between one of the two names below. I need a name. Also, while you're at it, please subscribe. Love to have you with us. Lots more videos coming up soon. On that note, Mr. Insert Name here. See you soon.